Good evening and welcome back to The Diff, where we ask the question, what if we could redesign everything? It's a pretty chilly evening here in the studio and I'm joined by Francois and Laura from the Make Fashion Circular Systemic Initiative from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I'm James George and I'm your host for this evening. So why is this important? So, Francois, great video, but why is this important?
It's important because when you think about the fashion industry, most people would picture like the cover of magazines, the glamour that comes with fashion show, runways, but that glamour comes at a very high cost, as the video says. The fashion industry is extremely wasteful and polluting. When you look at how the industry operates today, there's a lot of waste in the system, so we wear our clothes a lot less than we used to. Over the past 15 years, the production of clothes has doubled, while the number of times we wear the clothes that we buy has decreased very significantly. And once we stop wearing those clothes, most often they end up in the landfill or incineration. To give you a sense of how much that is, it's the equivalent of 1 truckload of garments that goes to landfill or incineration every second. And currently, there's less than 1% of our old clothes that will be recycled into new clothes. And so when we looked at the waste in the system, we saw that actually there's a massive economic opportunity that comes from the clothes that are stuck in warehouses, that are stuck at the bottom of our wardrobes and that are discarded too early in the landfill. And to capture this economic opportunity, we need a fashion industry where clothes are made from safe and renewable materials, are used a lot more today, and never become waste.
But presumably this is not a new problem though. You know, this has been building over a number of years. So why is now the time to do something about it?
The way we see it, there's 3 reasons why now. First, because the market for fashion is evolving quite rapidly. When you look at growth within the market, the prediction is that over the next 5 years, the market for new clothes is going to grow by 2 to 4% on average per year, while when you look at the market for second-hand clothes, for example, it's going to grow by 50 to 20% a year. So actually moving towards new model represent a new growth opportunity for most companies. The second reason why is because customers are changing. People now want experience, not stuff. They are much more open to new business models, to rent, to access, to swap. And so all those changes within customer are actually enabling now those new business models to increase clothing use. And the last reason why is because policymakers are increasingly aware of the impact of this industry on the environment and also on social issues, and are looking to take action.
So changing understanding of what's sort of happening, changing technologies which allow the enablement of that, and then also a direction from the policymakers and the provision to actually make the conditions right for disruption at this time. So Laura, how are you guys doing this? What is it that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is trying to champion here?
Yeah, so we have set up an initiative called Make Fashion Circular, and the initiative will run for 3 years. So we actually kicked off the initiative already in May this year at the Copenhagen Fashion Summit, when we announced that we'd be doing it. The idea is that the initiative will bring around 50 organisations together. So organisations that include right from the very beginning of the value chain, so people that actually make fibres, produce garments, also brands and retailers, but then also those that have to collect them, sort them and reprocess them at the end when they're no longer used. As well as these groups, we'll bring together governments and cities and also what we're calling a little bit enablers, people that can help support this transition. So over the course of the 3 years, we will have this group of 50, and they will work together around some core areas of focus that can help us actually create momentum towards a circular economy for fashion.
So when you launched this back at the Copenhagen Fashion Show, and I think you had like on stage Levi and H&M, and I think Burberry was one of the... Yeah. So since that point, I mean, that was quite a seminal moment with Ellen on stage as well. Since that point, how have your participants kind of come on board? Who else has kind of got behind you?
Yeah, so we're very near to our 50, which is what we wanted overall, so that's great. We're very nearly complete with the participant group. In May, I think we're about halfway through that sort of recruitment process. If we talk about who's involved, so we have different levels of participation. We have core partners who are working closely with us, people that have already started to perhaps explore this quite in depth or really championing this idea of circular economy already. So we have, in that group, we've got Burberry, we have HSBC, we have Gap, we have H&M, Nike, Stella McCartney and PVH, who have brands such as Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger. And then the actual participant group that we call participants is the mix, say, across the value chain. So interesting people that are supplying to the industry, such as Lenzing, who make fibres, Tintex, who are an organisation in Portugal making fabrics, Arvind, who are a garment manufacturer in India, and then through to sort of other brands and retailers. So we have VF Corporation, who make things like North Face.
So quite diverse,
really
and
diverse,
broad geographical spread.
Yeah, absolutely. And then all the way through to, as I say, collectors, sorters. So we have a company called iCollect who go and actually get the clothes once they're no longer wanted. They collect through stores such as H&M. And then we also have in that group as well, we have something we're calling our affiliate partners, because this is a space where already there's quite a lot going on. And so we wanted to make sure that Make Fashion Circular could be complementary and actually really build upon the existing initiatives that were going on. So in our affiliate partner groups, we're working with organisations such as the Global Fashion Agenda, who actually curate the Copenhagen Fashion Summit each year and actually set some interesting commitments and targets for the industry, for their participant group. But we also work with organisations such as ZDHC, who are the Zero Discharge for Hazardous Chemicals organisation, which is a group of industry players that are getting behind banning and removing really toxic, horrible chemicals from the mix. So yeah, really wide and varied number of brands and retailers that I haven't even mentioned, and our affiliates that then sort of help support us by doing complementary things.
And I guess the full list of participants is on the Ellen MacArthur website on the Make Fashion Circular page.
Exactly.
For people to find out. That's
exactly.
Great. We've got a flurry of questions coming in, as we'd expect. So I'm going to put a couple of those to you in a moment, so be prepared. But I guess, so what are you doing right now? 6 months in, what's been happening with the Make Fashion Circular team?
Sure, so I can take that one. And so what we've been doing is, with the work that we've done, so Make Fashion Circular came out of our report that we published at the end of last year, which was called A New Textiles Economy. And this started to identify areas where the industry could start to work to actually create this momentum towards a circular economy, and came our sort of what we're calling areas of focus. Mm-hmm. And these are 3 things that we think need to happen across the industry in parallel and be worked on simultaneously to start to see that transition. So the first one is new business models that keep clothes in use. So exactly as Francois said, our clothing is really not been worn for very long compared to how long it could be used for. And so actually looking at how do we disrupt the current idea of buying clothes, wearing them for a short period of time and then just discarding them. So actually, how do we change the fundamental business model of the industry so that the clothes are kept in use? And that could be through leasing or renting your clothes, for example, instead of actually buying them. And we're seeing some interesting examples. Maybe we can go on to the examples in a minute. So I've finished the train of thought. The second area that we're focusing on is safe and renewable inputs. And that's really important, that from the very outset, what goes into those new business models, into clothes, is made from materials, chemicals that aren't going to harm the people that are producing them, they aren't going to harm the people wearing them, and then after they're no longer used, there's no negative impacts as well from what was put into the clothes from the first place. And then the final one is something we're calling solutions, so used clothes can be turned into new ones. And this really focuses on how do you design something from the very outset so that once it's no longer worn, so you try and get as many uses out of it as possible, you make sure that it's made from safe materials and it's renewable, but once it's no longer able to be worn, can you perhaps undo the stitching and actually take the fabric out and reuse that? How does that then become something else? Or how do you at least keep it at its highest value rather than it just going straight to landfill or going into recycling? What else can you get out of that garment?
So following the kind of core circular economic principles.
Yeah.
And I understand, Francois, last week, you guys had your first workshop in New York, and you got back hot off the heels from that last night. How was last week? What was the energy like in the room?
Yeah, so last week was actually the second workshop.
Okay.
And the idea is to, over a course of 2 days, bring all the group that Laura outlined together to actually work on the key topics that we have. So how do we increase momentum internally? So how do we make sure that organizations are increasingly convinced that those new business models have value, and how can they convince the key stakeholders that they have in the organization, like the senior management, the board, etc., to dedicate resources to those new business models. Other topic we are working on is how can we look at the design of products together so that actually what's put on the market can actually be taken back and turned back into new clothes. One of the stats that struck me in the report was that today the industry uses 8,000 different chemicals. So between the field and the garment that you buy, there's an average, there's 8,000 chemicals that will come throughout the process. And of those 8,000 chemicals, we understand the impact of 2,000 of those. And of those 2,000, there's a lot of them that have potential cancerogenic impact, that destroyed ecosystems. And so you can imagine what's the impact of the 6,000, for which we have absolutely no idea. And so making sure that from the outset we design stuff that we actually want to take back and are happy to put back into clothes is fundamental.
So that's striking, like 8,000 chemicals, only 2,000 we know that what they actually do, which begs the question, why are we using those other 6,000 chemicals? What is it? Performance of the product, or is it just the way the industry has got, where the industry has got to?
Yeah, I think it's an inherent lack of transparency within the supply chain of the industry. So basically, the way the industry is set up is you have a company who is creating the fiber, you have a company who is making it into a fabric, someone else who will dye it, someone else who will assemble it. So you have like a lot of fragmentation, as we say, between like a lot of different actors, and it's very hard to maintain a understanding of what's happening at those different steps when there's such a level of fragmentation. And also, the move towards really understanding what's happening is quite recent, and so for a long time, the industry has been driven through like costs. So like the key thing that's important is how much cent can I save on each piece of garment, because that's how you will protect your margin, and not really exactly knowing what goes in it.
I think perhaps also maybe just to add to that, a little bit around the performance is part of it. I mean, they've been, these things have been used for a specific functionality, and I guess a little bit of an innocent until proven guilty approach has been taken for the amount of chemicals that are used. So actually, until they start to test them and understand what the actual impacts of them are, for that point, this is great. This adds really great waterproofing, or this is a new colour fast dye that's not going to run, and so you end up with this huge sort of plethora of different chemicals that are in the mix, but with very little audit trail as to where they've actually come from.
Oh wow! So I'm going to go to a couple of the online questions, and if you do want to put in a question to Laura and Francois, you can use any of our Think Diff social platforms to put your questions forward, and they'll get to us to here in the studio. So from Eliza, she asks, how do we know that people are more and more open for new ways of how we own clothes, like the renting model? Have you guys got any examples of that?
Yeah, so the reason we know that is because organizations who are doing it are making a very good business out of it. So you have platforms like The Real Real, which is an online consignment luxury business. So basically you can buy secondhand luxury items on their website. And there's Vestia Collective, which is basically doing the same. Real Real is in the US, Vestia Collective is based in France. And the two of them turn $1.5 billion a year in revenue. So actually people are using it. So that's for the secondhand and the kind of acceptance of that. And the vintage trend has been around for years, and a lot of the concept stores globally are starting to open vintage stores also. So that really proves that there's something around secondhand that has been unlocked quite recently. When it comes to renting and actually accessing clothes without owning them, you have platforms like Rent the Runaway in the US, White Closet in China. They have millions of active subscribers. They've been raising millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in private equity and venture capital and are doing very good business out of it. And on a more like micro level, when you look at behavior from millennials, so 16, 17-year-old, they have a tendency to swap item quite naturally and to actually go in store just to experience and take like pictures of potential outfit and just enjoy the fun of the store, but actually the real behavior is in like exchanging clothes and mix matching with your friends. So you really see that happening at scale.
So when Stella McCartney came out a little while ago and said we should have one or two really nice items of clothing in our wardrobes and the rest should be on this rental model, there's actually that's actually happening on the day-to-day. Natalie asks, and this is an interesting point, why should these firms collaborate when they could steal a giant slice of the economic pie for themselves?
You want to do that one? You want to go for it?
I can. So what's interesting is like the industry, the fashion industry is extremely fragmented. So the largest company in the industry, which is Zara, has less than 2% of the global market share. So the giant size of the pie is actually not that real because you're not in an industry that's concentrated like airlines where you have like in the US 4 airlines that have 2/3 of the market, right? Here you have like the top 10 brands have less than 10% of the global market. And so because the market is so fragmented and because they share so many of the same suppliers and have so much overlap done in the supply chain, they actually have an incentive in collaborating to make the supply chain better and the entire practice better because together they are much stronger in actually aligning the incentives throughout the industry. Yeah.
Laura, anything else you want to say?
No, I think Francois covered it.
Great stuff. Okay, one more question for now then, and it kind of links to the last one. And we you mentioned about the economic rationale. Why should a company look beyond the sale of their products, particularly if they don't get economic benefit from doing so?
That's the entire thing. They will get benefit in doing so. And today they're losing a lot by not doing it. So today the way the industry works is what you do is you try to minimize your costs. Make sure that when you purchase the item to your supplier, it's as cheap as possible. You will negotiate to a cent. That's a level of negotiation that's happening down the value chain, is to the cent. Mm. And then you try to sell it at a competitive price on the high street. And what you get is your margin. You get only one chance, right? Throughout that, if you miss a trend, well, then you don't sell it. If you have overstock, you don't sell it. And a lot of the items that are actually sold are sold during the sales, which means you don't make your full profit. And so actually today companies have massive problem protecting their margins because like with the new regulation on supply chain and stuff, the costs are like going a bit up. They have problem like selling at the full price because there's this phenomena of sales all the time and outlet. And actually, by changing your model and making sure that with one item you can generate several revenues because you rent it, because you resell it, because you're able to recover the materials, you can actually completely change the economic incentive and the opportunity that you create for yourself. And so that's why we think that organizations are actually increasingly looking into it, because they see an opportunity for new growth and new margins.
So we've heard about a lot of ground already, but what would be really important to look at now is some of the other elements that are coming up in the diff in the coming week. We're now in week 3 of the diff, and we've had almost over 1 million views so far. So before we hear a little bit more from Laura and Francois, here's what's coming up.
My name is Kinga, and I'm going to tell you about my 3 favorite sessions coming up. The first one is with a startup named LabLaCo. This session is part of our Startup Day, a day devoted to showcasing startups and how they disrupt the industry. LabLaCo provides us with a marketplace powered by blockchain and AI technologies. The next one is System Reset. System Reset is our featured-length diff documentary. We're exploring the story of change in our society, filmed in London, Barcelona and Amsterdam, where we talk with leading thinkers in materials, economics, commons movement, fab labs and more. The third one is 28 months later. This show looks at what the world will look like 20 months after we have adapted the circular economy. How different would our lives be? What would our cities look like? And how is our food grown? Those are my 3 top picks. Hope you enjoy them. Ciao for now.
And welcome back. So joined by Laura and Francois from the Make Fashion Circular from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. In the previous part of the session, we were looking about how this global momentum, this global initiative is taking effect. But actually now, what about more about the specifics? What's happening in the kind of different geographies?
I don't know where to start. There's quite a few examples where to start from on that one. Where can I start with that one? Perhaps maybe with some of our participants, we can talk about something that they've done quite recently as a sort of collaborative project, actually starting to see how collaboration can start to experiment and see across the different areas, how can they bring in the different principles together, working with a range of partners. So Inditex, who own Zara, recently ran a sort of a small, I guess, pilot project to understand how can they engage their customers to start to bring back their old clothes, and then once they bring them back, what can they do with them? So they collaborated with an organisation called Halitex, who are also one of our participants in the initiative, and also HP, who are doing a lot of research into this area on textiles and digital, and how can the two become a big opportunity for them in the future. So across the 3, so Inditex, Halitex and HP, they actually started to develop a t-shirt that was made from recycled clothes. So they'd taken back old clothes and recycled them into clothes, and then actually put on it a little digital watermark. So technology could enable it. You could snap it with your phone, this little watermark, not visible at all to the eye, but you could take a picture and it would start to bring up messages. It would show about the event. They were running a yoga event at the time, so you could bring up information about that. But they're also looking at using it for how can that sort of technology enable maybe transparency, where did the materials come from, and start to build the story and the connection with their customer by getting involved in these activities of actually explaining how do we put our old clothes into new ones.
And are they organisers based in sort of North America, or is that more of a global kind of ambition?
So at the moment they're just piloting it in Europe. So that's their one that's in Europe, but I can imagine them looking at other opportunities globally. I know Francois has been jet setting, so he might have some some opportunities from maybe, I don't know, Hong Kong or China, or some of the interesting things we're seeing over there.
Yeah, so if you look at the 3 focus areas we have on new business models, materials and solutions to use clothes that turn into new ones, you have things happening in all of them and in all different geographies. So whether you look at North America, Europe, South America, or Asia. So for new business models, we can take the example I mentioned, White Closet. And what's quite interesting about White Closet is you pay a monthly fee, so you pay the equivalent of £50, $70, or 499 RMB, depending on where you are. Let's make it global. And you have access to all the clothes you want. So it's basically an online thing. You go online, get your delivery, send the one you don't want anymore back, and you keep on and you keep on exchanging like that. So you have that monthly fee with like a limited number of items you can access, and they have over 5 million active subscribers on their platform, which is quite stunning. And the other thing that's pretty fascinating about this example is Alibaba. So the e-commerce giant is one of their main investors. So it really proves that even, like, as we said, like the smart money is starting to realize that those new business models hold massive promises. So that's when it comes to new business models, just one example. When it comes to new materials, I think in Europe you've got quite a few examples of people looking at agricultural waste streams that are not edible and try to turn them into either dyes, like what Archroma, which is one of the largest dye manufacturers, is doing, actually taking something that they call earth colors, so dyes. They have 7 different colors, and you can you have full traceability, so you know basically everything about it up to the store, and they're made from like extremely natural materials. And when we look at solutions, so used clothes are turned into new ones. The example that I like at them is based out in Los Angeles. It's a company called Redesigning. And what they do is they take old Levi's jeans, and as Laura said before, they remove the seams of those jeans. They take those that you can't wear anymore, repair the fabric, cut the bits of the fabric that are not usable anymore, and take this old fabric and turn it back into a new pair of jeans. And those new pair of jeans, they've created a complete like community feeling around it. And what drove me like crazy when I heard about this example is a standard pair of Levi's jeans, $120, something like that. It's like reasonably expensive. A pair of Redesigning jeans, which is made from old Levi's fabric, right? It's $250.
Oh, wow.
So and they've created that completely through like the image and the fact that every single jean is unique because they're all made like with just this very fabric that they've collected. Everything is super unique. There's like this feel, this story about it that's pretty amazing, and that enables them to do that. So those are like the 3 examples that I find quite interesting at the moment.
But presumably when, and that works in that particular environment, but $250 is quite cost prohibitive for a number of people.
Absolutely.
So how do the broader viewers get involved? I mean, Chris Grantham from IDEO in the previous session told us about digital wardrobes. Is that the answer for the modern consumer?
You don't have one answer, and that's the thing, because you have different ways of wearing clothes. So you were mentioning, for example, you have those highly durable classic items that you love, your coat, your like sweater, your pair of like jeans that you absolutely adore, and you want it to like age with you, and you want to like keep them forever. Those items, you own them, right? For the things that are a bit more like trendy, that actually run through the different seasons, you probably want to rent it or access it. And for the things that are like those durable items, once you don't want them anymore, but they're not really broken in any way, you just emotionally you're not that attached to it anymore, you can resell them because they still have value. So there's a lot of different ways to actually do that. If you have something you haven't used for a while, swap it with a friend or put it on eBay.
So it really is a mindset change from where we are at the moment. But how do initiatives like that compete with the likes of Primark and other high street retailers who are selling fast fashion, very cheap, fast fashion?
You don't really like compete with Primark. It's more like bringing them on board. And I think, as I was saying, because those organizations are starting to realize that their established markets are increasingly competitive, increasingly hard. They are taken out of pace. So like 10 years ago, H&M was probably one of the companies that was able to go the fastest. And then you have Zara, and then you have ASOS, and then you have Boo, and then everyone's going faster and faster. And it's very, very hard to sustain that competitiveness and leadership. And so they're starting to realize that maybe there are other models in which they can develop that would actually have completely different benefit and enable them to reconcile the pressure they start to get from government and some of their customers around like the environmental footprint of their work and the wastefulness of their practices, and actually the opportunity to satisfy those core needs.
It's really interesting when you talk about the kind of the changing thinking around that and the mindset. And I've had a question here from Vinny, and I think this is it's quite specific, but it'd be interesting to see if you guys have got any examples. Parents of young children know the struggles of kind of keeping children in clothes that fit. You know, when we get to our stage, we don't grow that quickly, but except maybe the seasonal times of the year. Are there any examples of kind of kids' clothing companies that are adopting these sorts of models?
Yeah, so there's a couple of quite interesting ones actually. One that we've seen quite a lot and seems to be really doing quite well, which is called Viga, based out of Sweden. And they've used this idea of a subscription service purely for that reason. Kids, you know, they can, when they're newborn, they can potentially even grow out of clothes before they've even worn them. You know, so it's such a quick turnaround. They have developed all organic cotton baby clothes that can be then put back in. They know what's in the clothes, so they can take them back. I think they get hired out, you know, a number of times. They get cleaned and then they get put back in and recycled once they're no longer used. So there's someone already taking advantage of that. And then there's another one that's slightly more innovative that I have to say I'm not entirely sure will catch on, but potentially called Petit Pli. And they've made these sort of, I guess you can describe them as corrugated clothes, where they're sort of all crumpled up, and actually as the child grows, the idea is that they expand and it expands with the child.
They've taken principles of origami, like the folding, to actually create a garment that can grow and deploy as you grow.
So potentially you only buy one
so you buy
outfit
one,
ever,
and it grows with the child.
And it grows with you.
Yeah, from about newborn to I think it's about 8 or 9 years old.
Well, I guess you said, you know, there's not one answer. There needs to be lots of different solutions.
But that's what's absolutely fascinating about this topic is that actually the only limit you face is the limit of your own creativity, and it's about how do you identify the core customer need that you want, and it's not more stuff. It's about different experiences. It's about different projection of yourself. How do you identify those, and how can you sell them better in a way that enables you to increase the material effectiveness that you have, so making sure that what you produce is used at its complete maximum.
And I guess, you know, this particular industry is renowned for its creativity, but this seems like a fairly industrial problem on some scales when the disconnect through the value chain. What challenges have you guys faced over the last 6 months, or what have been the areas where you have kind of had to think a little bit differently about how you get organisations to realise and engage?
I mean, from my sort of thoughts so far, it's not really, I wouldn't say, you know, there's probably numerous challenges, but there's also numerous opportunities for the industry. I mean, France has already identified lots of places where, you know, whether it's through a better customer engagement or these sorts of things, there's lots of economic opportunities to capture. I think one of the things that we've seen actually is just really actually getting people's mindsets to go right back to the design of a product. Can be, you know, it can be quite difficult to get your head around. You know, if you've always done something a particular way, saying you need to now think about how do you design that pair of jeans so you can actually recycle that at the end, or so you can recover the fabric at the end. So maybe the buttons are made of exactly the same material as the rest of the jeans. The threads need to be made of exactly the same material as the rest of the jeans, or they need to be detachable. And so it's more around shifting that mindset to say, actually, right from the beginning, how do we make sure that, you know, as with circular economy, we design out the waste, we design out the problem right from the beginning. So I think that's the bit. And for ourselves as well, sometimes you have to remind yourself that's where we need to be starting.
So what's very interesting is the supply chain, so the manufacture of garments are a lot more innovative than we would think. Actually, within the industry, where we see a lot more of the innovation is actually happening at the supplier level, where they think about how can we actually create those recycling. We hear people saying, oh, we've created this denim excellence center where we actually do a lot of research on how can we make it better, how can we increase the recycled content in it, how can we make it look better, less water in the dyes, more durable, etc. So there's a lot of that happening already within the existing supply chain. And then when you look at technological advancement, you have a lot more opportunities happening, like with local manufacturing, 3D printing, repair potential, customization potential. I have this example that came from this weekend, actually. There's Nike has this new experience thing in in New York, where you enter and they drop a shoe every 2 weeks. That's going to last for 10 weeks. They drop a shoe every 2 weeks. The shoe is like completely white. It's been designed with like this or that athlete, so it's quite an amazing shoe. And then they've partnered with 5 current artists to create loads of stuff that you can put on it in terms of the swoosh with little wings on it, loads of different artwork that you can actually imprint on the shoe. And you buy the shoe, and then you have this array of customization that you can do on the spot in the store to make the shoe really your own. And actually all those new things that are happening and new technologies that are enabling better customization, better adaptability of the product to your exact needs is quite fascinating.
So do you see that then as a trend for where the industry is going? Gone are the days of large mass produce. It is all about the individual customization.
H&M is opening some parts in their store. They've piloted it in Hamburg and have scaled it in Paris, where you can repair your garments, you bring them back, you can repair them there, and you have loads of same like stuff in there, so little pearls, flowers, everything that you can actually embroider on your garment, and it's all about the emotional durability. So when you think about your clothes, the thing that makes you stop wearing it is either you get a bit too fat or a bit too skinny for them, or you stop loving them and you don't want to wear them anymore because the emotional durability of the product is like as expired for you. And so the more ways you can find to like increase that emotional durability, make it feel more like yours, make it feel more connected to you, actually the longer you make this clothes wearable.
Laura, Francois, thank you very much for that. It's a really big topic. You guys are 6 months into this three-year systemic initiative. If you do want to find out more information on the Make Fashion Circular, please check out the Ellen MacArthur website, where the updates will come and the news as it develops over the coming months. But I'm really pleased to have had them in the studio with us this evening. So we've heard how you can redesign clothes, how you can redesign the entire fashion industry in a way that makes economic and environmental sense. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds good to me. Thank you very much for watching this evening. There's one more session left in today's diff rundown. I've been James George. Thank you and good evening.